Well, good morning, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay.
You need to make it home.
Exactly. You guys can feel free to move the chairs. We can
All
place
right.
them wherever. If you want to sit in the shade,
That's, we don't have
a
to
personal
hurt.
thing. So, come on down.
Come on down.
So for those that I haven't had an opportunity to meet yet, I'm Steve Williams, and I'm a police captain. I get to serve right now as your interim chief of police since Nino Amatar retired last October. So the plan was when Nino left, we knew about a year in advance when he was going to leave. And the plan was two captains, so there was me and one other captain. We would alternate back and forth, serving in the role as interim chief until the city decided, do they want one of us? Do we want to go outside and have somebody else do it? So it's just my turn right now. So since it's my turn right now, I appreciated Nino's effort in engaging in the community and getting input and putting himself out there. And so that's why I wanted to start this back up. We couldn't do it last year as much as we wanted to because of COVID, and it's still a little bit iffy. Like we can't go inside where we used to have it because of spacing requirements and that kind of thing. So I thought this would be better than nothing. We'd get together and
Healthy fresh air.
share.
You don't have to wear a mask up here.
You don't have to wear a mask. Still not used to this. So right before Nino left, I spent so this is my so I started in the police department as a volunteer in 1988. I became a dispatcher in 1990, and then a police officer in 1992, all right here in Turlock. And for my whole time, this was a no-no. Police officers don't have facial hair. We can have mustaches, but not facial hair.
Really?
And then right before Nino left, pretty much countywide, it was decided that to keep up with the times and be more reflection of the public and that sort of thing, police officers can now display tattoos, where we couldn't do that before either.
Wow.
And I'm not there yet. I don't have any tattoos to display. So for the first time in like 30-something years, I was able to grow this. I'm not quite used to it yet, but it is what it is. So got a little already. So
That's called wisdom. Graying hair.
So is this up here.
Yes. Wisdom.
So this is just really an open forum. Whatever you guys want to talk about, I can do some talking, or you guys can ask questions. I'm really open to anything that you want to talk about, kind of the hot topics that I'm aware of. And we can talk about any of these or anything else that you guys want to. So we have the local emergency that the city declared on March 16th for the unsheltered homeless and encampment crisis. And that is a 120-day declared emergency by the city of Turlock in an effort to re-shelter homeless individuals and deal with illegal encampments. So that's a thing.
Well, we had a lot
Another
of
thing is all these sideshows that are going on in town.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's awful. So we've had complaints on, it goes all over town, but concentrated areas are Christopherson has a lot of complaints that we can deal with. The countryside shopping centers, specifically on Tuesday and Wednesday evenings, like behind Olive Garden and the Kohl's parking lot and in and out, all that area. So we actually have a plan to address that one this coming week.
What did I miss? Sideshows of what?
So sideshows is like this. It's a group of cars that get together and they start spinning donuts.
Okay.
And what they do is they push the vehicle to the limits of their capability, to the point where they're losing control. So they'll spin around in circles, and a bunch of people will be gathered around in circles. They'll actually take over intersections. So not even in the parking lot. We had a case about a month ago where, maybe it's a little more than a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, Golden State and F Street, where they completely took over that intersection. And when I say they, I mean like 100+ cars.
Wow.
And so they're spinning donuts in the intersection, and the first police officer shows up because we get a call and we go out there and see what we can do to break it up. And typically when we get there and we turn our lights on, that's enough to get the message across to them, and they all scatter. They go away. Out here that didn't happen. So first police officer, solo police officer in a vehicle by himself, his backup units aren't there yet, gets there, turns his lights on, and is immediately surrounded by people. And starts taking bottles and rocks. And so the police officer has to make a decision. We don't deal with that kind of stuff in Turlock. We have a good relationship with our community. So when we have an individual police officer that's never been faced with that type of aggression towards an individual officer, he has to make a split-second decision. You know, do I get out of my car and do I engage these people and start giving them orders back? Do I speed away and potentially run people over that are surrounding my car? So
I like that idea.
very dangerous thing. So,
We won't miss them.
we have the encampment issue that we're dealing with. We have the sideshow issue that we're dealing with. It's budget season right now, so our budget for the city runs from July 1st through June 30th of the following year. So in preparation for the July 1st budget, we will start planning as departments in about February. So it takes February, March, and April to really decide what an individual department wants to request from the city council in the budget. And then around May, we present it to the city council, and with the hopes that in June, they will adopt the budget so that we start it in July. So we're in the budgeting process right now. And with the passage of Measure A, that represents about, if everything stays the same, that represents somewhere between $11 and $12 million additional revenue for the city. There's some cannabis revenue that didn't previously exist in the last budget that will exist in this next budget. So that's kind of the third really hot topic for us right now. The encampment issue, the sideshow issue, and the budgeting issue. So I'm open to anything you guys want to talk about, any of those three or anything else.
My wife and I were getting ready to go to, I think it was a Sunday night service at one Mr. Chopper, and they had a sideshow there.
Yeah.
And so we just turned around and make the move.
Yeah. Today's Saturday, so on Tuesday and Wednesday of this last week, it happened at Olive Garden, in Olive Garden shopping parking lot. So on Tuesday, it was bad. There were a lot of cars there. It is on private property. And then on Wednesday, it was worse. There were an estimated 300 to 400 cars in that parking lot engaged in the sideshow activity where a car or two or three would be completely spinning out and going out of control. So we have identified a pattern that they are occurring on Tuesday and Wednesday nights at Olive Garden. So we're upstaffing this next week. We're going to hire, and I know there's lots of controversy right now about there are concerns about overtime and the department's use of overtime, both police department and fire department use of overtime. But that's a public safety issue. We don't have enough. So what happened last Wednesday is every Turlock police officer that was on duty was dispatched to that, and it was overwhelming.
Clearly, they're coming from outside the area.
Yeah. So Fresno to Stockton meet in Turlock. And it's not just Turlock. Sometimes they'll meet in Ceres, sometimes Modesto, sometimes, Atwater, as you said. And so they're not just targeting Turlock. They'll pick a different city somewhere in the valley where Stockton versus Fresno will come and meet. So when we know about these things, because sometimes they'll advertise it on social media, and they'll unknowingly let us know in advance that it's happening. And when we know that it's happening, we can upstaff and we solicit the assistance of our partners. I mean, we'll call CHP in to help. We'll call the sheriff's office in to help, and we'll actually stage and wait for them to show up and prevent them from coming in the parking lot. So that's kind of what we're going to try next week. We're going to hire officers back on overtime next week, and when we see large groups of vehicles kind of in a line trying to come into the parking lot, our goal is to stop it before it happens. So, because when you get 300 and 400 cars that are have complete disregard for safety and have no respect for the authority that we show up, they lap acts. So our goal is to stop them before.
So what do you do with the ones that you catch?
So that's a good question. So as they're leaving, when they eventually decide to leave, oftentimes we'll try to stop them. There's 400 cars, so we pick, there's 5 police officers working.
Right.
So 5 of us will try to stop the cars. Then we have a decision to make. If they don't stop, are we going to chase them? Are we now going to get in a vehicle pursuit and drive how many miles per hour through town and catch these people, or not? So luckily we have our little friends now. So every police officer has a body camera, and what we can do after the fact is use the body camera footage, identify license plates of those engaged in that behavior, take that to a judge, get a warrant for the car, and a week or 2 later, when they think that they completely got away with it, guess what? They get a knock on their door and it's a police officer and we take their car.
I love it.
And
Yeah.
so we take their car means that we seize the car, it goes through a criminal justice process for them to get their car back. And oftentimes they do get their car back. But
Doesn't teach them anything.
it's kind of nice when they think that they're away from you, they get completely knock on their door and there's a car. They have to go through the process of getting the car back. So it is. There's a release fee from us, and then every day that it's in the tow yard, it's a tow company.
What time of night are they usually doing this?
So out there in the Olive Garden parking lot in that shopping center area, like Dick's Sporting Goods, Kirkland, and Crumble Cookies, all that. It's anywhere between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m.
That early?
The time that they advertise on their social media is 7:30 p.m.
So there was one advertised last night. It was more of like a birthday celebration as opposed to a sideshow, and I don't think it amounted to much of anything. But how it started was in that parking lot, anyways. It was advertised as a car show, not a sideshow, but like come out and show, be proud of the car that you fixed up or that you restored or something, and just come and use this parking lot. Let's admire each other's cars. Well, somehow, maybe not even because that group needs to do, somehow that became a bigger thing that now has turned into something. That's very dangerous.
Oh yeah.
Not to mention, I mean, it's dangerous is the main thing, but there's now this neighborhood right across the street, that Rose Garden.
Mm-hmm. The new one, yeah.
And so until 10 or 11 o'clock at night, they're constantly hearing these, vehicles screeching their tires in the parking lot. So,
Additional question.
yes.
On the side show, when you impound the car, I'm sure it has to go through a test, whatever the legal that fixed it was previously.
It doesn't go through a test. So what does need to be fixed is if the vehicle is not currently registered, we won't release it until it's registered. But if it's things like if there's a tail light broken or if the windshield is cracked, we don't require that that's fixed.
How about straight headers?
Which ones?
How about straight headers? Straight pipes?
So for
No,
like
no.
muffler issues, we don't do that, and that was a good question.
Because there used to be excessive noise.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No wonder he knows.
There's a crime violator of that.
Well, when I was in my 20s, I was a typical
Yeah.
20-year-old and I had a hot rod.
Yeah.
But I did the stupid things that we were doing. That's being honest.
Yeah, so modified exhaust on a vehicle for the purpose of increasing the noise is illegal. I would need to look into, is that, oh yeah.
These guys are running around with straight headers. No mufflers at all. And this, and they, that, and then one more thing, and I'll be quiet.
Don't be quiet. Keep talking.
On North Berkeley,
Okay.
that's a drag strip. From Hawkeye down towards Taylor.
Exactly.
That direction. I guess it's a high school and I don't know who else. But that's 35 to me.
Any time of day or day of week that it's worse than others?
It can be any time, but it seems more afternoon-ish. Anyway, 35, they'll be doing 55 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
And going down the street.
Between what, Hawkeye and Taylor?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
That's
not all the
good.
same. Okay. The,
Is it daytime?
yeah, mostly. And motorcycles too. I mean, it's not limited to just the cars. But yeah, it's like, I was out there one day, I was sitting on the course, and there were two-lane road. And they were taking both lanes like a drag strip, racing. And they were doing, I'd say, police stuff.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I didn't know, so I'll let the patrol guys know and the traffic guys know. Is it mostly weekdays, like when schools get letting out, or do you think it has anything to do with school?
It probably does have something to do with school, but it can be any time, really, of the day. I hear it really easy.
I live in that area, and I hear them start up maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They'll race down there, and they'll go all the way to Christopherson and that whole area. I hear them all the time,
Yeah.
every day.
And I've talked to Dawn about that crossing light, that yellow blinky thing that goes to Markley Park from Heather. That's a joke. It was a joke when they put it on Kroll, because I've almost been hit, because I do a lot of dog walking over there. And I told Dawn, they got to change that. I'd like strips or something, because they don't care. I had one of those tall, bigger white pickups nearly run me over while I had the light in my direction. It was broad daylight. They don't care.
Is there one at like Heather Noel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the yellow means nothing.
If it was strips, it'd be okay, but with these white lights out here, it's not even being used. You can't see them.
Well, the thing is, yellow means nothing to them. They just keep going.
Yeah, but
They're singularly
they're where your
focused.
eye is
Yeah.
looking.
I mean, I used to live on Kroll by the university,
Yeah.
and when they put that yellow thing up there with the blinks, I thought, I told Dawn, in Modesto on Orangeburg by the school, they have a string of red lights. When you hit that button, it's red lights that come on, and that gets their attention to stop. The yellow, they just blow it off. Well, they hit us poor dog. Yeah.
I saw it for the first time yesterday. It actually works for me. The yellow lights.
Oh, I stand in there and I glower at them and I make them stop unless they're going too fast.
I didn't even see anything clear.
You can be dead right.
Appreciated. And I saw.
Yeah. No, I pick and choose who I
Yeah.
stand and glower at. That white pickup was not one I was going to stop in the middle and make them stop.
Yeah, we don't have too many of those in town, and there's certain criteria, like, it's almost like a stop sign, that we can't just put a stop sign at intersections that we want to. There has to be certain counts of vehicles, and that's why you'll see like that strip of black, looks like rubber tubing across the road. Well, that's counting the number of vehicles and the speed. The front tire versus the back tire can calculate the average speed of a vehicle. So where there are, when it's justified, like the number of pedestrian traffic, that would justify the use of that type of like yellow light or red light thing. There's some federal monies for that available to the city, but we need to be able to justify the use.
Well, with the new houses going in that area, that would probably bring a lot
Yeah.
more foot traffic from that side.
Well, at the very least, if you're going to stick with yellow, put a string of lights across, because those things on either side of the corner, it's like they just have blinders to them. And yes, sometimes it will work for you, but it's not very often, especially when they're clipping down that road at 45 and 55 miles an hour. They're not going to hit the brake for anybody walking.
I haven't walked over there. Is there a button that you can push to activate?
Yes,
that?
that's exactly how it activates. Yeah.
I wonder if the lights just need to be oriented different, adjusted more.
No, because I really
It's
think,
a really big road. It's like a 4-lane road, so it does, like the lights you set across, like red lights,
Or even
flashing,
yellow.
like
So
do
these
better.
are just a couple lights. Right.
yeah, and they're not
And most people, they're looking at the stoplight ahead, and
Right.
if they can, if it's yellow, they're gonna speed up and go through it. So
But I've seen them do it as narrow as Kroll is. You know, they don't do that 30 mile an hour and 25 and 30 through there. And I've watched cars almost hit college students, and it's just a short hop with the yellow lights, and they can't miss it.
Yeah,
but they're not.
those
They don't.
crosswalks.
Miss it. And
They
they're
never
going
stop
too
for
fast.
red lights, so why do they want to stop
Stop
for
for
yellow?
yellow. Exactly. Kroll's another one that's a racetrack.
Which one?
Kroll by the university.
Well, they put those yellow lights in a roll. I think there's two of them.
No, there's only one on either side where you cross by Vito's.
Is there not one further down? Also?
No, there's one right.
I think there is.
You got
There
one
is
by
further
Poppin
down at
Court.
the other end.
At the, you know where the lake is, right?
Yeah.
Poppin
Next
Court.
to Kroll,
Oh,
it's
okay.
That driveway, right?
Okay, they changed.
I
They
think
added that.
road's 25 miles an hour.
Well, Kroll, where I used to live at Park Place Apartments, that's 25 through there. And I think there are only a handful of us that did that speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, people do go fast, and it's narrow. There's a lot of cars parked right
You know.
Well, the other thing
And with
is,
the coffee shop
when
trying
the light turns green, you don't get
Yeah,
out,
we'll just drive.
start your car.
Probably ought to pause for a second. to make sure.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just somebody slipping through the yellow light, it's people actually
Running the red.
running the red,
Yeah.
blatant.
So we have, you guys probably already know, but we have, at any given time, we have 5 police officers on duty. Okay, so that's the number, five officers and a sergeant. And so at night, between 8 o'clock at night, when night shift starts, and 2 o'clock in the morning, when the swing shift gets off. So for that period of time between 8 p.m. and 2 p.m., there's double the number of officers because the shifts overlap. But other than those officers, we have 3 traffic officers. We have 2 traffic officers and a sergeant. That their primary goal is traffic safety, and how they accomplish that is through education, enforcement, and engineering. So it's things like education would be they go out and proactively talk to kids in school, talk to community groups, and anyone that's willing to listen about traffic safety. The enforcement, we all know about that. That's when they pull you over and give you a ticket. And then the engineering is things like what you're talking about with, they're not responsible for it. They send it to the city traffic engineer, which is in City Hall. But they work with City Hall to decide, do we need a stop sign here? Do we need to adjust the speed limit? Do we need to put the blinking lights somewhere? So, I don't want to make excuses, but I want to make sure you know, we only have 2 traffic officers. And, you know, right now, their primary focus is schools, because since schools have restarted, especially during the beginning hours of school and ending hours of school, they're completely focused on school safety, getting kids to and from. So, we calculate the most frequent intersections that have collisions every week. And so when those 2 traffic officers aren't engaged in engineering and education and school enforcement, we expect them to go out and focus on the areas where there have been the most traffic collisions during the previous month, or during the previous 6 months, or during the previous year. Sometimes we take an average. So if it's not a traffic officer who's typically on a motorcycle, to enforce things like people running red lights and speeding on the road, it's the responsibility of the 5 police officers that are on duty. And at any given time, like right now, when we used to have it in the room, these things in the room, we could show you the calls pending. On a Saturday morning, there are 5 officers working right now, and there's probably anywhere between 5 and 10 calls pending, which means that every police officer is doing something, and then there are 5 to 10 calls waiting for a police officer to get dispatched. So we don't want to make excuses, but I want to let you know why enforcement isn't what we would like it to be, because we simply don't have the numbers right now. So what we do instead is out here in our back lot we have radar trailers, and sometimes when you're faced with a blinking example of what your speed is, sometimes that slows people down. Those things also have cameras on them, so we could do like we do with the sideshows, where it's almost like a red light camera, but it's on a speed trailer, and we haven't tried that yet. We haven't tried to get people tickets based on them passing a radar trailer and capturing their speed on camera. But traffic safety is a real issue.
Well, I know I lived my apartment was right on Kroll, right across from the university. I was not constantly, but I did call the campus cops a lot because that was their jurisdiction, as more so than yours right at the time. You guys were understaffed. But I got all kinds of stories why they couldn't do it or didn't do it. And a lot of us were wondering, why are you over on the other side of Turlock? Your area is supposed to be on campus.
Well, they're good partners for us. We dispatch for them for Cal. So Cal State University has their own police department, completely separate from Turlock, two different entities. But other than Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, we dispatch for them. So we dispatch after hours and on weekends for them. So if somebody on campus calls 911, it comes right into our dispatch. We use them constantly for backup in town. When we have 5 police officers working, if one of our officers make an arrest and go to jail, now we're down to 4. If we have one fight in town, it's like a man versus woman verbal argument, we don't send one officer, we send 2 officers for that fight. And then you have one officer that's on a burglary report and one officer doing something else. When all of our officers are busy, we have nobody available, and a call comes in that is what we call a priority 1 or a priority 2, like immediately we have to dispatch it. It can't wait for these calls come in. We will break one of our officers from something, and we'll have Cal State help us. And that happens multiple times a day, where Cal State will come and help us do their thing. They do have law enforcement jurisdiction, and they could enforce on parole, but technically it's yours.
I know, but I know they have a 1 mile radius or something like that. And I know you guys are always understaffed. And
Another question. What is
COVID restrictions in Turlock. So our status regarding COVID restrictions in Turlock is we follow the county protocol. So we're still in a tiered system. So the county of Stanislaus is currently in the red tier. And it means that restaurants can be open for inside dining at I believe it's 25% capacity, maybe 50% capacity for restaurants. Masks are still required. So what I'm getting, there's a difference. There's a kind of a discrepancy between CDC and CDPH. So the CDC is the federal level health authority, and the CDPH is the California Department of Public Health, and their restrictions or their requirements are more restrictive than CDC. For example, right now CDC says that if you have been vaccinated and it's been more than 2 weeks and you're in a group of people inside, you don't have to have your mask on. California Department of Public Health does not agree with it. So because we're in the state of California, we're following, as a county, the California Department of Health. So there's a little bit of discrepancy between the 2 agencies, the federal and the state. But so as a local municipality, we follow the county health officer's guidelines. The county health officer is following the state guidelines. So that's probably kind of confusing and a long way around, but that's where we could be much less, I say restrictive, but the police aren't enforcing those types of things. So, if somebody calls and says, hey, restaurant X doesn't have masks on. Okay, well, we'll go out and we'll educate. We'll make whoever aware of what the county and the state protocols are. But we're not in the business of going out and issuing citations for that type of thing. Although we could, we have the legal authority to do it, and nobody else in this county is doing it either. So you'll see me because of my position. I walk around with a mask on because I feel example and all that. So regardless of what we think about it, I think that we have a responsibility to comply with what is the current law, which is the California law. Yes, ma'am.
This is back to traffic safety. I accidentally got caught in traffic at Walnut Elementary School, pickup time.
Yeah.
And it was, all I could think was, if an emergency vehicle needed to get through here, it would be horrible. So I was just wondering, is there some way to work with the schools? And I know it's not just at that school, I know it happens at other schools around town, to work with them on getting people through. And I mean, I'm so glad that the schools are open and it's great, but that just kept going through my mind because I was probably stuck there for 10 minutes, not moving at all. And there's a median, and you know, the 2 lanes, but they were packed.
Yeah, my dad lives over in that area, so I know exactly what you're talking about. So I would say the first thing would be to approach the school itself. I know that not the junior high, but Dutcher recently reorganized the way that their parents enter. It used to be that they entered off of Colorado, and that was a mess. Kind of like Walnut was. So now they've rearranged their, they redid their parking lot and reorganized everything. So now parents are entering off of Conrad.
Enter off the boat.
Instead of lining up on Colorado. So maybe start with the school and see if the school is willing to reimagine the way their parents pick up and drop off. And if that doesn't work, the school board, I think, would be the next step. There was another one that recently did something like that, another school that was
Julene?
Julene, yeah. So Julene did that where it was such a traffic issue that they reorganized their parking lot. So I don't know, that area, especially that one road, whatever road that is that Springer?
Springer.
Yeah, with the center median right there. When you're going eastbound, you have the center median, you have 1 lane, and if a vehicle, I think vehicles can park there, right? Is that a red curve?
I don't think vehicles can.
Oh,
Well,
maybe just the lane is so
on
narrow.
the west side they can,
Yeah,
but not on the other side.
yeah, I know, we get complaints about that on the traffic side a lot. So I don't know, other than checking the school, I know that we've deployed our traffic unit out there, because maybe that's what it is. That is a red curve on that side of the road, and people will park there anyways, which prevents cars from going around. So I know we've sent our traffic unit out there to deal with that kind of thing. So, yeah.
What about here now where Papa is? There's like people going to take a walk, the entrance and exit.
I wish I had an answer to that one too.
City engineer right now.
It's calmed down a little bit. I don't know if you remember when it first started. I mean, they would go all the way across the tracks.
Oh my
to
God.
get into that parking lot. And
The novelty has died down a little
it
bit.
has a little bit. It's not as bad. It's not that bad where it's going out across the tracks. But when you first enter that parking lot, you have to immediately get over to get into the drive-through. And so when you do that, you keep vehicles that want to get out from getting out.
Well, it's almost like they should have just reversed it and had people
Coming
like
the other way.
through the
Yeah.
up in front of the dentist. Not making a deal.
I will go there again.
Whatever city organization approved that engineer needs to be removed, replaced.
Well, there are a lot of spots like that where you go to McDonald's on Tuolumne and they're coming out all the way into the lane and people can't turn or get by because it's all drive-through, and Starbucks is the same way on Hedstrom. It's crazy.
Starbucks is the worst, but there's
Yeah, so there are all kinds of places in town like that. There's not a whole lot you can do the way where they're located, so you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, I know Starbucks on Hester made some changes
Yeah.
within the last couple of years to try to keep that.
And it's
down.
helped. It's helped.
Yeah. But I don't know what the answer is for Popeyes. Or for the new one I control in
Dutch Bros.
Dutch Bros, yeah. That's calmed down a little bit.
A
too.
whole lot.
But wait till the
Yeah,
university
with the
reopens
College
though.
students.
Hopefully they'll walk up to the window.
Yes, that would be nice. Or go inside or something.
The only way you Popeyes
It's just like a, there's just a window.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a few
Yeah.
tables outside,
Yeah,
that's
you
about
can
it.
sit outside.
Okay, I've seen that. I
It's
haven't
like a
tried
patio.
that.
Yeah, another question?
About staffing.
Yeah.
You said that the budget, entering into a new season, so what are you hoping
Yeah.
will happen?
Good question. So we have, right now, we have an authorized staff of 82 police officers. And we have an authorized non-sworn staff of 44 employees. And that's everyone from, so non-sworn would be dispatchers and records technicians, community service officers, property technicians, animal control officers. Those are all non-sworn staff. So over the last 2 years, the last 2 fiscal years, Turlock Police, just like every other department in the city, have frozen positions, which means they're technically still on the books, but there's no funding associated with that position. So those 10 frozen positions in the police department right now include the chief of police. There's no funding for the chief right now, so when Nino left, we froze that position. So 1 chief, 2 community service officers, 3 dispatchers, 1 records technician, and 3 community officers. So those are the 10 frozen positions in the police department. And so with this next budget year, what we're asking for from the police department, because we recently got approved for a grant for 4 police officers in November, and we haven't hired those people yet, I didn't feel like it would be appropriate to ask for more police officers since we have these current grant officer vacancies right now. So we have asked for the chief of police. You've got to have a chief. You can't operate without a chief. So chief of police, 2 community service officers, because what those community service officers do is they're non-sworn positions that actually go out in the field and take police reports. They no suspect police reports, traffic control accidents. They'll actually take vehicle collision reports, and what that does is it frees up police officers to be able to handle emergencies. So we thought it was very important to get those community service officers refunded. So 1 police chief, 2 community service officers, 2 dispatchers, and a records technician. Those are the 6 positions that we're asking for to be refunded by or unfrozen by the city council. And I hope this doesn't knock you out of your chair, but those 6 positions, it's about $1 million with salary and benefits combined. The total financial burden to the city for those 6 positions is about just under $1 million. But we think it's necessary, and this just gets us, not fully, but it gets us on the road to being restored to the level that we were 2 years ago. So it's not like we're asking for more positions, we're asking for positions to be reinstated that currently exist. So the plan is we'll ask for these 6 of 10 positions to be restored this year, and then the other 4 positions, which would be another dispatcher and 3 police officers the following year.
What about your traffic? Can you build that back up to Ford Motors again?
After we get restored to the level we were, some of the things that we want to build up are, so this is now 3 years down the road, because this next year, we're restoring just those 6 positions. The year after, if city council approves, we would be restoring the other 4 positions to get us back to whole, which is where we were 2 years ago. Then we can start looking at growth. And growth would, for us, in terms of staffing, would include things like traffic. We definitely want to increase our traffic presence. We started a neighborhood resource officer position. I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but the idea is this. Right now on the street, we have today 5 police officers because we have 5 police. So geographically assigned areas of town, there are 5 of them. And there's 5 officers to handle those. So we started a program just this last year called a neighborhood resource officer. And we want one of those geographically assigned to specific areas of town. But the idea of the program is these neighborhood resource officers aren't tied to the radio. Like they're not responsible for in-progress calls that are occurring right now. They're responsible for things like, I can't cross Berkeley at Heather Noel because I'm going to get hit by a car.
Is that Erica?
No.
Or Erin?
So,
or whatever?
Erica is a crime prevention specialist. She's
I got to
on
talk to
Congress.
her. I like her.
Neighborhood resource officer, his name is Ian Rodriguez. So that job of that person, and hopefully we'll get more of those, is to identify problems within the community and then figure out what resources are necessary to solve the problem, whatever it is. It may not even be a police issue, but we're public service. So when people come to us with problems, even though Heather Noel and Berkeley is not necessarily under the purview of the police department in terms of changing all of that, this neighborhood resource officer would be the liaison with City Hall and county agencies and CHP and whoever else needs to be involved with fixing that problem. Right now, this one neighborhood resource officer that we have, his main job is unsheltered homeless. So it's his job, along with everybody else's, but his primary focus right now, go out, get to know all of these unsheltered homeless individuals, find out why they're not accepting shelter services, are there any other services that they are willing to accept, and what could we as the police department do to get them in the process of getting these services. Because what we're finding is there's shelter beds available every night, right here in Turlock. And some people have accepted shelter services, but the overwhelming majority are not. And so if we could get them into some type of program, a lot of them have mental health issues, a lot of them have addiction issues, a lot of them have other issues that are societal problems, they're not police problems. But we could be the conduit to connect them to the services that will help restore their life to a level where they don't have to live out on the street. So that's an example of what a neighborhood resource officer would do. I would want to increase our traffic unit for sure. I would want to increase our neighborhood resource officer program. And then gangs, we don't have a gang unit right here in town, although we do have a gang problem in town. They are alive as well. So we do have a special unit that kind of does that on a collateral duty, but we don't have a gang unit that is dedicated to problems associated with gangs. So that's what I'd be looking forward to. And then ultimately, we have a CARES team, which is a collateral duty. So a collateral duty means there's an officer on the street, he or she does his job every day, but in addition to their regular job, they're kind of cross-trained to do this other thing. It's kind of like being on the SWAT team. SWAT officers are regular police officers that work a beat, but when there's a need for SWAT team to be activated, they get up, geared up, and their SWAT team to go. So CARES team is a group of officers that are specially trained to deal with mental health issues and work with the county service providers to get individuals with mental health issues into the process as well. I would want to increase the CARES team because that's a significant problem.
I do have a question regarding homeless. I saw you guys removed them from, I think, West Main Street, or Jim and Lambert. Where did they go?
That's a good question. So we had a problem on Golden State between Hawkeye and Tuolumne, which was railroad property. We had a problem on First Street between F and about D Street, somewhere around there. So right before the city declared the emergency on March 16th, since Golden State and First Street is railroad property, Union Pacific Railroad came in and dealt with their own property before we declared the emergency. They have their own police departments, kind of like Cal State. They are their own entity. And because those problems were occurring on railroad property on Golden State and on First Street, the railroad came in, gave notice, and made them leave. It's just like, it's private property. It's Union Pacific Railroad private property. And it would be just like them coming on your front lawn, sleeping on your front lawn. You tell them they gotta leave, and when they don't leave, the police make them leave. So it's much easier when it's on private property. So after those two things happened, the city declared local emergency. And the first official activity of the police department under the local emergency was West Main. 1400 West Main between Planet Fitness and Evergreen Pathway. That also is private property. There is a property owner, just like Union Pacific Railroad. It would be like somebody coming on anybody else's private property. So we got the permission from the property owner who doesn't live in town, lives out of town somewhere in California, to go in on his behalf, enforce the no trespassing law, and clean up the property. When we did that, there were about, I believe on West Main, before we started engaging and getting people into services, there were about 50 people living out there in vehicles, in trailers, all that. So those 50 people, some of them did accept shelter services, but very few of them accepted shelter services. So a lot of those people went over to West Glenwood, which was the next area as you're coming southbound 99, near like Denny's and that area. You would see all these people lined up on the road is called West Glenwood. So there were about 75 people over there. We gave them notice. We cleaned that area up. And now these 50-ish people that were on West Main and 75-ish people that were on West Glenwood have either scattered throughout the community, gone to a different community, or have accepted shelter services, because there's not that large a group that has reassembled somewhere else in town. So my only guess is that they've scattered throughout the community. I don't think they left for a long time. Some of them may have, but I think they're still here somewhere, and that's not our goal. Our goal is not to scatter people throughout the community. Our goal in this emergency is to get people connected with services and re-shelter them, whether that is connecting them with families that are willing to help them, or getting them into an official program that can help them. So we don't want to scatter people throughout the community. And I recognize that by going in, what the railroad company did on Golden State and First Street, and what the city did on West Main and Glenwood, is impacting the community. Because instead of those 50 people and 75 people being concentrated in one area, I'm sure that a majority of them have scattered throughout the community. So instead of specific areas of town being overburdened with the impacts of these unsheltered individuals, it's now spread out more, and I get that. And so there is a long-term goal. There's two parts to this emergency, if you don't know. So when we declared as a city the local emergency on March 16th, it was for a period of 120 days. And the goal of that was to address these illegal shelter encampments that are occurring in town and reconnect people with services. But we recognized that wasn't all going to happen within 120 days. So the next phase of it, we're on we're about day 50 of 120 right now. The next phase is after we get through the 120-day period, which will end on July 15th, we will then engage in a 24 to 36 long-term program where we have plans, and we don't yet. The plan is to make plans for transitional housing and long-term stable housing and rental assistance. So there's kind of there's a hierarchy, and there's a step that gets a person from unsheltered homeless to permanent self-sustaining housing. And it's, people don't have to follow exactly what the steps are, but there's a clearly identified path to get a person from unsheltered homeless to permanent housing. And that's what we want to do in the next phase, to address these however many people don't engage in the shelter services during the 120 days have a plan for the next 2 years.
Are there very many, because a lot of these are professional homeless people, they just want to stay that way. But are there very many that actually are homeless through no fault of their own because they lost a job, can't afford something, and they really want to get back on track? Do we have many of those?
We have them, for sure. There's
But is it a low percentage?
I would say a low percentage, yes. My experience is there's kind of, and I hate to kind of classify people, but this is my experience. There's kind of 3 different types of people, maybe, that are in these homeless camps. First kind of type of person is just that. There are people that just, they run into bad luck and life happens and they lost a job or they had a life event that has caused them to be homeless and they need help and they'll accept help. That's awesome. I wish there were more of those people. And there's help out there for them. There are Turlock is an awesome community. There's lots of caring, loving, people and organizations willing to help. So I wish there were more of those people. That's kind of category 1. Category 2 are, and this is the majority in my experience, people that at least externally say they want to live here. You can't tell me what to do, and this is my choice. And a lot of that is mental health issues or addiction issues that cause that type of response. But the vast majority of people are those things where they tell me to my face and all of our staff, I don't want help. I don't need your help. This is my life. I'm going to live out here the way I want to live. You can't make me do anything different. I don't quite say it that bluntly, but that's certainly the message. And then the third category of people in these homeless shelters are the criminals that live amongst them. So I would say approximately an equal number of people on each side, an equal number of people that really are just truly down on their luck and need help and will accept help. About that same number of people on this side are criminals that live in these communities and prey on the vulnerabilities of the people in the middle. So there's the criminal element, there's the people that need and will help and will accept help, and then the vast majority are the people with either mental health issues or addiction issues or just life philosophies that say, I'm going to live how I'm going to live and you can't make me do anything different.
Speaking of criminals, this morning's Turlock Journal, there was an article that this year 75,000 released.
Yeah.
Are you seeing it that
Oh, for sure. So her comment was there was an article, and I didn't see it, but she said there's an article in the Turlock Journal today that talks about a certain number of criminals that were released from the prison system. Yeah. So that started with AB 109 somewhere around 2012, where there was this effort to revamp the correctional facility and criminal justice system. So it started with decriminalizing certain behaviors or lessening the criminal impact. For example, when I was a police officer out on the street and I would pull somebody over and find them in possession of cocaine, I would arrest them and take them to jail. That does not happen anymore. If a police officer today finds somebody in possession of cocaine or heroin or any other hard drug, we write them a ticket like they ran a stop sign, and we take their drugs from them. So we give them their ticket and they walk away. It's like we speed down the road. Not any amount. So if we can prove that they have an amount that is beyond personal possession for sale, or if we can prove that they're selling it, that is still a felony. But just mere possession of marijuana, cocaine, heroin, LSD, ecstasy, all of these hard drugs, I couldn't believe it when it happened, but it happens, and it's here today. And it's not Turlock. This is a California law. So anywhere in California, you no longer get to go to jail when a police officer catches you with a hard drug. You get a ticket, and you have to appear in court, you have to eventually answer to it. In answer to it now, probation or a very minimal fine, you still don't get jail time. So it started with that. The decriminalization or the lessening of criminal acts, reducing the act itself from a felony, which gets you to go to jail, down to a misdemeanor or even an infraction. Then, after that law, and it wasn't just drugs, it's also firearms. So it used to be that if you possessed certain weapons, that also was a felony that we get to take you to jail for. We don't get to do that anymore. There are people that are running around with weapons on them that when we find them with that illegal weapon, we also now have the opportunity to write them a ticket and let them go instead of taking them to jail.
Do they get to keep their weapons?
No, we get to keep their weapons, but we don't get to take
But
them
they
to
have
jail.
more weapons at home anyway.
So, that type of thing. The next step was about 2 years later, there was the overcrowding of the jail that was declared. And that overcrowding of so there's local municipal jail, which we don't have one in Turlock. There's no jail facility in our building. There is a county facility. The Stanislaus County Sheriff's Office runs the county jail. Above that is the state level. There are state prisons in California. And above that is the federal level. There are federal prisons in California. So what happened was somewhere around 2015-ish, the state decided that the prisons are overcrowded, which they were, and I get that. So the state prisons were ordered to remand a certain number of their population of prisoners down to the county level. So not enough room in the state prisons, so we're going to take state prisoners and give them to the county. County, you're now responsible for housing these state prisoners. So what that did was cause a domino effect that because these state prisoners are now in county jail, the county jails are overcrowded, which is the reason why I can't take somebody to the county jail when I find them with drugs because there's not enough space in the county jail because the state prisoners are in. Also, now because of COVID and other reasons, people that would otherwise be in jail are being released early, which is probably what you read in the paper. There's any number of state prisoners that are either housed in state prison or have been remanded to county jails that are now out of jail completely because of any number of reasons. It could be because of COVID reasons and they don't want to infect the county jail or the state prison with COVID. It could be an early release program where it's kind of time served for good behavior, if you will, in jail. So what that has done is a couple of things. It has repopulated local communities, and Turlock isn't alone in this, it's everywhere in the state. Repopulated local communities with people that would otherwise be in county jail or state prison are now roaming around our communities. And it has also occupied the space of county jail so that when a criminal act occurs in a particular community, there's not space available in the county jail for that person to go. So we give the ticket and let it go. It's in California.
It's going to get worse because I saw in the news that it's going to be, they want to kick out 75,000 more. They're giving them more good time.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, we don't have a jail here locally, and neither does Modesto Police doesn't have a jail. Ceres doesn't have a jail. Everyone that goes to jail in this county goes to the Stanislaus County Jail. But again, the space available in Stanislaus County Jail has significantly decreased over the past 10 years because of these state prisoners that are now have been remanded to the local or the county jail. So, just do what you're doing. Come out, partner with us. So, we can't do it all ourselves. So, prisoners, you as police officers, what do we do? As your chief, I just ask you to be involved. We can't, as police, do it all ourselves. So, partner with us. Let us know when there are problems, when you need help with something. I don't feel like the personal safety of individuals statistics or personal history to support that this effort by the state has put us in peril in terms of our own public safety. I thought that was going to be the case, but the numbers, statistics are a funny thing on the numbers, guys, so you can work statistics one way or the other, but just the raw data in Turlock doesn't demonstrate that this repopulation of prisoners in the community have resulted in more acts of random violence. There are certainly more acts of targeted violence. So within the criminal element themselves, gang violence has increased. So there are certain types of crimes that have increased because of it, but not just the random citizen minding their own business is now a victim of a violent crime, more so because of this effort.
Seems like there are more robberies.
More robberies. Yeah, there has been an increase in robberies. There's probably enough to hand out to everyone. I have, so we produce statistics, and again, on the numbers guide, this is the raw data. It's usually about a month in arrears behind. So, for example, we just presented this to City Council last Tuesday, which was April something, for the month of March, the entire month of March. So we'll do the same thing at the end of May for the month of April. So I'll hand this out to you. This is some statistics about what's going on in Turlock, or what did go on in Turlock for the month of.
So on the criminals that they were releasing into the states,
Yeah.
did I read correctly, or did I read a rumor that some of them had sexual predator attached to their names that were being re-released into the community? Pedophiles and all those nifty people.
There are certain crimes that are prohibited from early release, and
Hopefully that's one of them.
certain sex crimes are. Not all sex crimes. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
The ones that would immediately come to mind, most likely, are on the list of prohibited.
Okay.
Can't release early. So as we're passing this out, let me just walk through it real quick with you. This is for the month of March. And where it says department statistics, that little kind of pie chart shows the most common police reports taken during the month. You can see service demands on the right. We made 257 arrests during the month of March, and an arrest includes a technical arrest. Okay? So, for example, if we pull you over for a taillight out and you have a suspended driver's license, or you don't have a driver's license at all, no insurance, that's still an infraction, but if you don't have a driver's license or your license is suspended, you're technically arrested. We give you a ticket, we let you go. If we pull you over and you have cocaine, we give you a ticket and we let you go. That's technically an arrest. So an arrest does not mean go to jail.
You let them go with their car?
Not if their driver's license.
Thank you.
Yes. So if their driver's license is suspended, we get to tow the car still, but the state hasn't changed that on us yet. And to get their car back, they have to, the owner of the vehicle has to come here to the police department. They have to have a licensed driver with them, and then we'll give them a form that releases the vehicle. So we made 257 arrests during the month of March. We took 695 police reports, 937 self-initiated calls. Self-initiated calls could be anything from a traffic stop to a consensual encounter, like just a citizen interaction. It could be an extra patrol, like we know that there's a traffic issue in a certain area, so we'll proactively go out and monitor that area. We took 3,905 calls for service during the month of March. Received 6,000 non-emergency calls and 3,000 emergency calls. You see our staffing level down there on the bottom. That compares March of last year to March of this year. And so you can see we're at 82. So let me walk through that one real quick. So staffing, March of 2021, You see our population is about the same. Show it is exactly the same. 74,297 people. We have 82 authorized staff. Well, of those 82 authorized staff, we have 69 police officers working. And the difference between 82 and 69 is right now we have about 5 vacancies. And the numbers might be wrong, but I'm just going to give you roughly. We have about 5 vacancies. We have about 5 police officers that are injured and unable to work for one reason or another. We have about 3 people in training, and we have 4 people in the police academy. So although we have 82 authorized positions, we really only have, what is it, right now, 69 people working. And those 69 people is everyone from me as chief down to the newest police officer that is able to work alone in a police car. So this last statistic over here that says 1.10, that's 1.10 per thousand. The California average is 1.5, and the national average is 2.5. So what that means is for every 1,000 people in a city, there should be 1.5 police officers. Well, we have 1.1. So if we were at 1.5, this number of 82 authorized would be about 105. And that's the state average. So we're well below the state average, which is not a good thing. Social media, we have one person in the department, a non-sworn crime analyst that manages our social media. She does a great job. Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and all that stuff. So those are just some statistics about the number of people that follow us on social media.
What's a code 6?
A code 6 is a follow-up investigation, which means an officer went out and initially took a report for one reason or another, and then either the officer needs to do more investigation, or somebody called back and said, you know, I have additional property missing from my burglary, or I now know who did it. Come out and talk to me about it. Second page, I won't go through the bottom half, but the top half shows our, it's called Part 1 Crime Statistics, UCR. So you can see year to date we have had 0 homicides in Turlock. So homicide, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, and vehicle theft are the types of crimes that the state of California universally collects stats on for every law enforcement agency in the state. So that's why just those types of crimes are on here, because that's what the state says every law enforcement agency has to report. So an aggravated assault would be, so a simple assault would be somebody punching another person. Aggravated assault would involve some type of weapon. It could be a stick, it could be a gun, it could be a knife. That doesn't result in death, but it's something more than just personal contact one to another. An aggravated assault could be personal contact with another that is likely to result in death, like if a person punches another person in the head multiple times to the point where they lose consciousness, that could be an aggravated assault. But the state doesn't collect statistics on simple assaults, just like a regular fight doesn't rise to the level of aggravation. Guys, any questions about any of this stuff? How are we doing? 9:15, so we have plenty of time still.
So are you guys doing ride-alongs?
Not yet. Yeah, we gotta wait for COVID. So we've heard June 15th, right? You guys all heard this?
Yes.
June 15th is the date.
I'll believe it when we see it.
The state may possibly lift or remove the tier system.
We can burn the mask.
We should not burn the mask yet, according to them. We'll still have to wear the masks, they say. That's the one thing that's not going away. Outdoor masks will probably go away. What we're doing is indoor masks still a thing. So we're waiting on that. Because COVID is a thing, and our staff has been affected by it. We've had several staff members that have had COVID. For the protection of our staff, we're holding off on ride-alongs. But once it opens, that's a great thing for us to get people in our cars with us and let them see firsthand what they do. It doesn't get much better than that. So,
This is a goofy question, but I would have to know before I did it. You want the person riding along to just shut up and sit next to her in the back, right? No chattering because you got to stay focused, right?
no.
No?
No.
Oh, okay.
So we want the questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so if you've never done a ride along, most of the time the police officer that you're assigned to ride with that day, it's usually a 4-hour ride. Sometimes it can be a little bit longer if both of you agree to it, but usually it's about 4 hours. But no, we want the questions.
Okay.
We're,
I was gonna say, I sat in the front when I did my rattle.
no, you definitely sit in the front. You don't sit in the
Yeah,
back.
yeah, I'm sitting in the back.
So,
Oh, if the canine was back there, would I sit back?
Oh, well, I would want to sit with the dog.
so we learned to multitask like many of you do. So, I mean, when a police officer's out there driving around, he's scanning everything. Like, my wife constantly complains, do you ever relax? Like, right now, my back's against the wall for a reason. I don't sit with my back not against the wall. And it's kind of ingrained in it. So, when somebody's in the car next to us and they're asking questions, it's
Okay.
so as soon as we can get that ride-along program, it's me. I'm the one that's keeping it from happening. So if you want to blame somebody, it's me.
No blame. We want y'all to be staying healthy.
Yes, please. But as soon as we can, we want to get people back in the cars. It's a great thing. Great way to interact.
Is Officer Kim still here or is he?
So Kim Briggs has retired. Yeah,
Oh.
he retired about maybe 3 years ago or so, 2 years ago maybe.
I don't see him.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Going back to ride-alongs for a second, I know MPD's doing something where they're using body cam footage collected from the last few weeks or months, and they're making a video and uploading it on Facebook. They do it about, I think, once every couple months. Maybe that's something TPD could do.
That's a great idea. I haven't seen that yet. They're posting that on social
Yeah.
media now?
Yeah, they posted his virtual ride along.
Oh, a virtual ride-along. There you go. Okay. Yeah.
That's
That'd be a good thing. Well, we were the last in the county to start our body camera program. Every other agency did. We started sometime last year before Nino left.
It was the same week.
Was it the same?
Yeah.
Okay. So we recently released our first body camera video on social media, and we debated internally whether to do it or not. But my thought is the more transparent and open we can be, the better. So there was concern about, well, if we release this one, do we have to release all of them? And the answer is no. There are certain videos that we can't release because it will compromise the integrity of an investigation, and we don't want certain images to be out there until the case goes through the criminal court process. But kind of like what Patrick's talking about with Modesto doing this virtual ride-along, now that we've released our first video, and if you haven't seen it, it was actually right here. It was on First Street, just down the road, where an officer pulls a car over for who knows what, and there's 2 people in the car. There's a driver and a passenger. The driver immediately gets out of the vehicle and has a few words with the officer, but then gets back in the vehicle. Then the passenger opens the door. The officer is telling him not to close the door, stay in the vehicle, don't get out, and the passenger then starts running away. The officer can see the passenger has a gun in his hand. So the guy in the vehicle as a passenger is running away with a gun. So the officer chases him while the guy continues to run away with the gun. And at some point, as the suspect with the gun turns the corner, right over here, just 3 blocks down from here, 4 blocks down from here, he drops the gun in the middle of the road. I think he actually falls down while he's running, but the video's a little, I'm not sure if that happened or not. I think he did fall down though. Anyways, the gun comes out of his hand, it's laying in the middle of the road. The police officer, as he's running, scoops the gun up and continues chasing the suspect on foot, corners him in an alley, and what I was most proud of is there was no use of force. So this officer chased this guy with the gun into an alley and, didn't tackle him, there was no use of force by the officer. He simply, actually another officer, walked up to him, put him in handcuffs, and that was it. It was over. It was awesome.
Which officer was it that we were watching on the body cam video?
That was Villanueva. And so by the time the officer chased him into this alley, everybody in town was coming. All 4 other police officers in town are running code 3 in town to help this officer was chasing the guy with the gun. So by the time our officer caught up with them, another police officer was participating on the scene at the time and actually finished it. So it got us thinking, when things like that happen that are good and positive, we want to be more sharing of that information. So now we're kind of reviewing body camera footage and we do it anyways. That's part of our policy is that supervisors will randomly select body camera videos and make sure that the officer is treating the public well, investigating crimes completely, speaking appropriately, all those things. So we do those types of internal quality control audits, but during that process, if we find an officer doing something really, really well or exceptional, we want to start releasing more of those as an agency to demonstrate the quality of officers we have in the field. But I've thought about doing like an actual virtual ride-along.
What's that? What is it on? How do you access it?
It's on their Facebook page, YouTube. Yeah, it's on their Facebook and YouTube.
What about the camera thing for this that he was just talking to? Is that on the same kind of thing? Facebook?
It's on Facebook and Instagram, I think.
I don't know how to do Instagram. I'm too new.
Like someone who's, in your department
Yeah.
How many officers for
How many sworn female officers do we have? So we have 1 in detectives. So our detective group is a unit of 8, and one of those 8 detectives is a female. We have what we call our special investigation unit, which deals with things like drugs and somewhat gangs, and it's our only real proactive unit in the department. Like if a hot thing comes up that we need to address, we have this group of 4 officers and a sergeant that can go out and deal with it. One of those officers is a female officer. So that's 2 in special assignments, and so the majority of our staff is on patrol. Of our, what do we have, 69 active police officers right now, there are about 40 to 42 on patrol. And the rest of them are detectives or special unit types. The officers on patrol, female, we have a canine officer. I would say 5 to 8 female officers on
It
patrol.
seems like I've seen a couple this year.
Yeah.
I think it's 6.
6 on patrol? Yeah.
4 on patrol, 6 total.
Okay. Yeah. So we have openings. If you know of a female in town that wants to be a police officer, we'll send her to the police academy. So we have kind of 3 levels of recruitment for police officers. We have what we call lateral police officers, which means they're working for another agency right now and they're willing to come to work for Turlock. That's a lateral. We have an entry-level police officer, which means they have already been through the police academy and now they want to work for us. And then we have a trainee police officer, which means they have no experience. We hire them, pay them to go to the police academy, and then they come and work for us. So, if you know of any female applicants, we'd be happy to have them.
Sorry, it's 7. I forgot the newer one.
7?
Yeah.
When Turlock puts an officer through the academy, are they committed to work for Turlock PD? Is there a contract time or a length of time they're committed to, or they have to reimburse that training? Or
Yeah. So think y'all heard the question, but when we commit to hire somebody and pay for them to go to the academy, that individual signs an agreement with us that commits to work 5 years for us. And each year less than 5 that they work for us, there's a scaled percentage that they have to reimburse us for our cost of sending them through the academy. So ideally, we would put somebody through and they stay with us forever. But if it doesn't work out for one reason or another, there is a reimbursement percentage based on the number of years that they spend with us, up to 5. Once they're 5 years, then they're free and clear, and they could go somewhere else without it.
Turlock thinking about having somebody with training in mental health to handle these mental health calls.
Yeah, we have a group of officers right now that have specialized training that work with behavioral health staff. And so there's this weird thing with HIPAA and the ability for mental health professionals to share information even with police officers. So our officers have to have this certain training, and there has to be a formalized written agreement between the two agencies to share that information. But that's our CARES team that I was talking about, that eventually, right now, I think we have 4 people that can serve as CARES team officer that have this special mental health type training. There's maybe an opportunity down the road to actually hire as an agency or as an county a mental health clinician that would actually be on staff with an individual agency or with shared within the county that would go on these calls with officers. For the CARES officers that do have this special training, mental health professionals do ride in the cars with them. They haven't done it during COVID, but once that opens up, that does happen. But there's an effort to redirect funding from the police department, not necessarily here in Turlock, but just law enforcement in general, redirect a certain portion of funding from the police department to the mental health agency, so that when we get a 911 call of a mental health issue, it's not a police officer response, but it's a clinician that responds. And there are benefits to that, but I'm not in favor of that, mostly because of the safety issue involved. I can see us maybe we're both dispatched to it. We're certainly not trained to the level of a mental health clinician, and so we would benefit from that experience. But sending a mental health clinician, I've been on hundreds of mental health calls. There needs to be a police officer there for the safety of the person that has that training that can engage with them.
Have you seen what they've said with this pandemic shutdown all year?
Yeah.
An increase in domestic violence and child abuse. I know we did have one suicide recently in Turlock. I don't know about if we've had more. Okay. And you've seen a lot more of that this past year or not?
Yeah, I've seen a lot more. There's a significant, there's been an increase, won't call it significant, there's been an increase in domestic violence. Child abuse, I can't say that there has been. I think that there has, but I don't know for sure. And domestic violence and child abuse you won't see on the sheet because it's protected by law. We can't release information. So things like the names of individuals.
Right.
We won't release for both domestic violence and child abuse because there are laws that protect the identity of this. So that's why we don't do stats on things like that, because in my experience, yes, there has been an increase. During COVID.
Mental health experts and professionals have been saying that nationally it's gone way up.
Yeah.
And I just wondered how bad it was in Turlock.
Yeah, I would agree that there's an increase in suicides and domestic violence. And probably child abuse also, but I don't remember seeing the type of the equal level of increase in child abuse that I've seen in domestic violence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not related to anything, but I'm a student at go about it. If a student applies at STAN, and they go through the whole interview process, and if one agency or whichever country that we pick, and then we pick for this department, what do they do? What do interns do for?
Yeah, we love the interns. It's a good opportunity for students to be able to see what we do, and it's also kind of a recruiting ground for us as well. We've hired several recruiters that they volunteer to come with us as part of the schooling, get to know them, and they get to know us. It's a very good thing. But typically when an intern is offered to the police department through Cal State, they'll work in records, processing police reports, and request inquiries, and the paperwork type of thing that goes on in records. Sometimes we'll assign them to detectives to help with things like, thank you for coming, to help with things like missing person investigations, where we're following up with like a juvenile runaway, making a phone call and finding the juvenile return call, that type of thing. Sometimes we'll assign them to the traffic unit because in our traffic unit there are a lot of grants from the state and federal government where we get funding, and there's lots of paperwork that goes along with managing those grants. We've assigned interns out to our only kind of off-site facility within the police department. It's animal services, and it's so sometimes we'll assign an intern to animal services if they have that interest with animals, if they want to be a veterinarian eventually or something like that. So we assign them all throughout the department, but most of the time it's in the.
How long is it?
I believe it's 3 months. Sometimes it can go a little bit longer, but memory of it is it's about a 3-month commitment from the student. And it's a part-time thing. They come a couple times a week for 4 hours a day or something like that. So it's not like a full-time job. Any questions about anything?
How many dogs do we have?
We have 3 right now.
All right.
Yeah. I'm a dog guy. I had a dog. I have 3 different dogs over my career, and then I was a canine trainer for about 10 years. So dogs are a big thing. At one time, when I was in the unit, we had 6 handlers, 6 dogs, and that kind of just moved down. And then the budget became a problem, and we eliminated. And we brought the unit back about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, somewhere around there with 2 dogs. And one of those dogs got cancer. And so that brought us down to 1 dog. That dog was kind of taken out of service and allowed to be a home pet. Then we increased it back to 2, and now we're back up to 3. So,
Oh, great.
yeah. So we're police dogs. Yeah, so, Marco Diaz has one, and, so they have their own canine association and their own Facebook page, and they do postings. They have Tongue Out Tuesday, whatever that means.
Oh,
They do it
that's
like
hysterical.
They'll see the dog
Yes.
dancing and take a snapshot of the dog at home or on duty or whatever. Kind of a fun thing.
And that page is on their own name, under their own name, or how do they?
It's called Turlock Police Canine Association. So when I ran the canine unit, I did that at the Turlock Police Canine Fair, where we did it at the high school a couple years, and then we did it out at Pedretti a couple years, and it was an opportunity for people to bring their own dogs, and us to bring our dogs, and there were vendors, and we do canine demonstrations, and so yeah, now they have their own Facebook page, which wasn't a thing back.
Didn't have
How
Facebook.
often did they used to do like those educational programs?
Well, the canine fair was done once a year, but we think there's big public relations needs for the canine unit. People are, I think, more willing to interact with a police officer with a dog than just an officer go out to schools, you know, if a school requests us to come out and show the kids the dog, or service groups in the community, that's a big part of it. So we'll do it as many times as people ask us to. Yes, sir.
You train your dogs here in town, or where you train your dogs?
Do we get them here in
No,
town?
you train them here around?
Where do you train them?
Train them, yeah. So we actually partner with the sheriff's office right now, and we do joint training. So yeah, sometimes it's here, sometimes they'll come here and we'll go to the fairgrounds, or we'll go to a park in town. And then sometimes we'll go to Modesto and go to one of their parks or one of their training facilities. So they train twice a month, the canine unit, and it's a different place every time. Sometimes
They look like at the airport, I think they.
yes, yep, yep. They have a facility in Modesto over by the airport, and that's kind of like the hub of their canine unit right there in Modesto. I think they have 8 dogs, if I remember right, in Modesto. Another.
Are there any plans to reinstate the open house that you used to have once a year?
Oh, we'd love to do it, yeah. Yeah, we didn't do it last year because of COVID. It's typically in the August, September, October months. So our plan this year is to do it this year, as long as COVID will allow us to do it. But yeah, I think it's in October is what we have planned right now. Because there's also National Night Out is in that same kind of month range, and that's a pretty big deal for us. There are about 35, I say, roughly different neighborhoods throughout the community that participate in National Night Out, and so we don't want to conflict with that. But yeah, open house, yeah, our plan is to get that back open up this year. Yes?
What is it you do with those? What do you do with those meetings?
For the open house? So for open house, it's typically one day, and it's on a Saturday, and we have a majority of our special units, like the canine unit, the SWAT team, and the traffic unit, and we give demonstrations, and then we open up our building. So because this is a police building with confidential information, we can't just let people walk through the building. So there are state and federal level clearances that are required before you can go through. But we open up the building and we escort you through the building so you can see what the inside of a police department looks like when you're accompanied by a staff member. And it's just another way to engage with the community, just open up and share what we have. Anybody else have anything?
Last year, right before COVID shut things down, there was going to be like a mass shooter training drill, I think throughout the county, in conjunction with the college police department, the sheriff's department, the local departments and stuff. Is anything, it concerns me having, you know, the college campus here, and although that can happen at a high school also, I'm a survivor of one, so I would be interested in, you know, knowing if there's any more training.
Yeah, so we have, as a department, we have active shooter training a minimum of once a year, just to make sure we're current on, because we treat active shooters as police officers different than we treat almost everything else. So almost every other call that we go to, very calculated, and you know, we'll hide in the corners, get with our partners and kind of watch what's going on for a little bit. We'll plan out our approach to the front of a house or the front of a building, and we take the time necessary to develop a plan before we approach a dangerous situation. And that's just the standard for every call. Active shooter's different. So active shooter, all that's out the window. And safety aside, for the police officer, we don't wait for backup. And we don't, you know, watch and see what's going on. We immediately run to wherever the threat is, which is against all of our training, which is why we have to keep current on the training. Immediately respond and run as necessary to wherever the threat is without a backup, and as quickly as possible appropriately address that threat. So, you know, when we had our little scare out here at the high school, was that last year?
Oh,
2 years ago.
2 years ago, training kicked in, and every police officer in Turlock obviously responded to that. Everyone from the chief and me and whoever, all the detectives. The building is cleared. This building, everyone went there. Sheriff's office responded. CHP responded. Merced County responded. Probation responded. We had probably 100 police officers there between probation, CHP, and Turlock, and all of our partners. Very, very quickly. And training kicked in. So we immediately searched that. It slowed down once we kind of recognized that there was no longer an active shooter on campus, which there never was an active shooter on campus. It was reported as that, but it wasn't true. So once we recognized that there is no active shooter on campus, we kind of switch gears and we go into a search. So that's the point at which we do then get together in groups and tactically move through the campus and search rooms that have unlocked doors and common areas of the grounds and things like that. So we do, it's once about every 2 years. We, in addition to our own internal training, we do collaborate with, sometimes it's Cal State, but oftentimes it's the SWAT teams. So Turlock SWAT team, the Ceres SWAT team, and the Sheriff's Office, and Modesto, and Oakdale has their own SWAT team. We'll all get together and do an active shooter training, like a real live simulated active shooter training. So that might be what you remember hearing about.
They were looking for community volunteers and things to victims and participants. And
oftentimes we get people from college, like we get volunteers from students at the college that will serve as victims that we'll run across and will make it look like they've been injured in one way or another. And so as a police officer, it's another kind of unique thing with active shooter. If somebody is on the ground and we believe there's still an active shooter somewhere else, against our every other training that we go through, we actually bypass that person on the ground, radio it in, and we have teams behind us that will come in and deal with that person. Still working, hi Carlos, still working towards the threat. So that training is invaluable because it goes against everything else we do. And so we need to keep current on it so that when a thing like what happened at the high school, which really didn't happen, it was actually very good training for us because it demonstrated the value of making that time to do that training so that when something like that happens, it's still current in our minds of what was good.
I have a canine question because I watched them on television. How does the dog know who the crook is?
So a couple different ways.
Okay, because you don't know who it is. Somebody's out there.
Yeah. So dogs aren't trained, police dogs in Turlock aren't trained to discriminate between human odors. They're just trained to detect human odors. So when somebody's running from us, and there's a group of people, it was very fun when I used to do it. You get over the top of your dog, you straddle the dog, and you actually use the dog's neck like a radar in between their ears, and you point them towards the person that you want them to engage with.
Oh, cool.
So when it's not somebody that's actively running away, we'll do searches online, which we have a 30-foot leash. So it's one of the reasons that we don't typically send a dog inside a residence. So if your house is broken into and you get home and your front door is being kicked in a residence, we typically don't send a dog inside because there may be a kid in there. Mm-hmm. There may be a family member in there. And we can't train the dog, smell this sauce and bite only this person. That's the TV.
Lots of times you don't have. Well, no, I watched with the cops, and it's like they're either on lead or they'll have a long lead, and they're out there looking for somebody under a bush, and I'm wondering how it figures out where to go.
So
like
if we're confident that nobody else is out there, like a lot of times in town, actually not in town, it's out of town, but when there's a stolen vehicle, and we chase the stolen vehicle around for a while, and then it goes into an orchard out in the county somewhere, and maybe the vehicle crashes or they just abandon it and run, well, we're pretty confident that nobody else is in that orchard except them. Okay, so we'll send the dog off leash because nobody else should be in that area. But if it's an area where there may be somebody else out there, that's when you'll see the officer. It's not that we don't trust the dog, it's that we don't train the dog to know you're the good guy and you're the bad guy. So that's why we keep them on leash to make sure they can only go where we can see them.
Okay, that explains that then too, about the on lead.
Yeah, we used to have what we call dual purpose dogs, where they're trained for searching for people and searching for something else, either drugs or cadavers or wrongs or something. In Turlock, it's drugs. And so we don't have any drug dogs in Turlock right now. And we don't have any cross-trained dogs that will do people and drugs. And some of that is because of the decriminalization of drugs in California. And there's not as much need for it because they find it. There's not chemistry associated with it that it needs to be.
Circling back to the like the mass shooting training, is there any sort of like assembly that you would do for younger kids, like high school, junior highs, and like mental health education or something for them, kind of to let them know like what to do and what happens when you guys get those calls?
There is, each school has their own protocol based on the type of campus that it is, like an elementary school versus a high school versus a college, and then just the number of students and just the physical makeup. So each school has an emergency plan that says, when there's a fire, do this. When there's an earthquake, do this. When there's an active shooter, do this. So we work with the schools in developing those plans, and we have those plans. The school shares each individual. There are 15 schools in Turlock, 15 public schools in Turlock. The school district shares those emergency plans with us, and each police car has each individual plan on our computer in the car, so we can pull it up. But the education that occurs at the school level, like with the teacher and the student.
And I don't know how involved you guys are in putting it every 15 minutes, but I was wondering if something like that, now that there's been such a huge problem with shootings, something like that.
Yeah, we would need, so every 15 minutes is a big deal for us. So we would need to work with the school district to decide which campus we would want to like have a drill that kind of like have fire drill, like have an
kind of like
active drill.
Show what happens and educate.
Rank Investigations has a presentation that they do, whether you run, you hide, you fight, and in what situations.
Yeah, I know that our school district engages in a couple of different private companies that will come and do, I think they call it audits, where a stranger's on campus. And how long does it take a staff member to recognize that a stranger is on campus and notify somebody? So it's things like that where there are private companies that will come out and do we haven't done it yet.
It's just making me think about this. Do you have a record of how many people are
school options?
How many?
I train.
By the train center.
Oh, yes. We do. So every time there's an incident involving a train, or pedestrian, or a vehicle, we submit what's on their property, they do their own investigation, and then we conduct an investigation. So we have statistics on, how many vehicle accidents, how many trains, but there's a whole civic ethical education component, and they also about railroad safety, and they've done that here in Turlock a couple of years.
Turlock have any plans, Steve, that they're going to be able to get a police car across town when the train blocks the whole the whole street?
Yeah, really, the only way to do that
They gain plans to fix that after all these years?
the only way to do that right now is to go down First Street to Golf
I know.
and back up over the overpass. So there is a way to do it right now.
Yeah.
But other than
Poor
that,
plan is
no other plans to.
they can tell them guys. I thought maybe when they put that one over by, you're talking about putting an overpass across by Spaghetti Park. Follow me?
Yep.
Bring that across and it'd be a good time to work out there, but
Yeah.
there's enough room.
I know that they've had discussions with Caltrans because that's the we need to be involved in that. There's discussions for kind of a Gulf Road once you get past Lander, right around the rest stop there to make Gulf Road an interchange. Right now, if we need to get from there across the tracks and there's a train, our only option is to wait until the train passes, or go all the way down First Street to Gulf and then back up over the overpass.
We have somebody, when somebody gets hit,
Yeah.
it blocks off for hours.
Yeah.
That's why I thought the city might finally, after all these years, get a little sharper on these things, but they haven't.
Yeah, the only other way, I mean, it's even further out, but going out towards Keys and taking the back roads to get to the Keys overpass and come back the other way.
Taylor would work as well.
Taylor, yeah.
Taylor's the closest in the overpass.
I arrived a little late, and you may have already addressed this, but the sideshows, the street racings, the Wednesday night hot rods, and I know there was an encounter Wednesday night in the parking lot where
Yeah.
officers had to show up and stuff. Is
Yeah.
there?
We talked about that a little bit. Sideshows and street racing is a problem in a couple different areas of town. Probably the most significant right now is the parking lot over in Olive Garden. Christopherson is an issue as well. So last Wednesday was bad. A couple of days ago, 3 or 4 days ago, I was telling them that there were an estimated 300 to 400 cars in the lot, and we were quickly overwhelmed with the number of officers that we had on duty. So we had every Turlock police officer go. We had every sheriff's deputy in the county go and come to help us. And it wasn't until we got that number of police cars on scene that we began having an impact. So how we're going to deal with it now that we recognize that there's a pattern of Tuesday and Wednesday nights over there is starting this next Tuesday and Wednesday, and for the next at least 3 weeks, we are going to hire officers on overtime. So you probably also missed it. We only have 5 officers on duty at any given time. So the risk to the public of engaging in this police pursuit versus modified exhaust or tinted windows or something like that. And the top in me says, let's just chase them, but that's not what's best for the public. So the goal is to prevent them from gathering to start in the first place. And if we can be successful in that a couple of times, maybe, I don't want to push this on to another community, but I don't want it to happen in Turlock. So maybe they'll pick another community to go to if we put enough effort into preventing it. That's the
And I know CHP Modesto's been a little more active and
have. So what I was saying,
racers and
what I was saying probably before you showed up is when we know about it in advance because they're smart enough to put it on social media for us. There's a traffic group in this county that includes Turlock Police, Modesto, the Sheriff's Office, CHP, and some probation officers. That it's like kind of like a little task force. That when we know something's going to happen in Oakdale, Turlock will go and help Oakdale because we know there's going to be a sideshow there. Same thing happens in Turlock. When we know in advance that something's going to happen, and sometimes we do, all of our partners come, CHP, and they all come and help us prevent this thing from happening. Our challenge is when we don't know it happens, and they just show up somewhere, very difficult for us to deal with it. In this case, at Olive Garden, we've now established a pattern. We know that it's happening every Tuesday and every Wednesday night between about 6 o'clock and 10 or 11 o'clock. So we're going to plan for it and try to stop it. Let's see, what else can I tell you about?
It's like a simulation of a drunk driver crash.
Any questions about the local emergency or the shelter activity that we're trying to do? There's all up to speed on that.
there's help, but you have to want it.
Yeah, we have 2 shelters in town. We Care has a 40 person, it's men's only. We Care has a 40 person capacity, and they typically run between 30 to 35 people a night. So there's between 5 and 10 beds available at We Care every night. And Turlock Gospel Mission currently has an 80 person capacity, and they're both right here on Broadway, just down the street from City Hall. Turlock Gospel Mission has an 80 person capacity, and they shelter men, women, and children. And of those 80 people that are possibly in that facility, they typically house between 30 to 40 people a night. So there's between 40 and 50 available beds every night at Turlock Gospel Mission. We try to get people to take the service and go to the shelter, but some of them just don't want to, for whatever their reasons are. We do have the fairgrounds now as an overflow facility, if it becomes necessary, that both shelters become at capacity, where there's no more room available. We have 170 beds available at the fairgrounds on an emergency overflow basis if it becomes necessary. But based on the reaction that we've had from the unsheltered community so far, I don't see a need to open that because they're just not accepting the service. They're not willing to go.
Which group is taking dogs and couples?
So dogs can be housed at Turlock Gospel Mission, and couples can be housed at Turlock Gospel Mission, but not together. So men stay in one room and women stay in another room, and that's some of the concern that we're hearing from some of the homeless community, that I need to be able to sleep in the same room, if not the same bed, as my husband or my wife, and until you can provide me with that
And their
opportunity,
animals.
I'm not going to a shelter.
And they're worried about their dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, so their dogs, I don't know about cats, their dogs.
Yeah, I'm worried about cats.
Yeah, there's dog. Turlock Gospel Mission has the ability to accommodate dogs. And if that shelter becomes to capacity, the fairgrounds will also have the ability to
Samaritan, they were talking about putting up some temporary shelters, like when they demonstrated in Modesto for $7 grand.
Yeah.
Did they ever do that? I know they got a bunch of money from the city.
Well, a bunch of money is available from the city, but they haven't received any of that money.
And it was gone out yet? Because
No,
them and
it's
Gospel Mission were both mentioned
Yeah.
to get money.
So none of them got the money, and we control what money they're going to get. So $498,000 was appropriated. Appropriated means the money is available to be used if necessary. And since I get to serve as incident commander, I manage that money. So as the of the $498,000 that has been made available by the city, I hope hope I don't get the number wrong, somewhere around $32,000 has been spent so far. And that $32,000 of the $498,000 has been for the cleanup on West Main. We actually hired a cleanup crew to scoop up and dispose of all of the stuff. The fencing that we surrounded that 1400 West Main with, and then the cleanup on Linwood. We hired a cleanup crew to go out there. So my goal is to not spend that money. If we need to spend that money because we have to open the shelter and it costs money to staff that shelter, then we'll spend the money. If there's another appropriate use of that money, then we'll spend that money. But because the city has made that money available, those partners don't get that money unless they can demonstrate an appropriate use of that.
Nobody's said anything that have any temporary housing, because I know these units are supposed to have heating and air conditioning both for $7,000.
They do. We looked into it. They're called pallet houses. So there's a $7,000 version and there's a $10,000 version. The $7,000 version houses 2 people, and it's literally the size of this. And it comes out to about right here. And there's a bed on this side and a bed on this side and like a little sink in between. And then the 10,000 version is the same thing, but it's a little bit wider and it houses bunk beds, 2 on this side and 2 on this side, and the space in the middle is a little bit bigger. The problem with it, or the reluctance to do it, is the process of, so none of those are allowed at Turlock right now. And there's a process that you or me or We Care or Turlock Golf Commission, anyone would have to go through to permit those uses. So if one of those, the Turlock Golf Commission or We Care, is willing to go through the process to get those things permitted, there's money available for that. But the stance that the city has taken is we're not going to bypass the public input process of going through the regular things that have to be done to get those permitted because of this emergency. That makes sense. So because
it doesn't, but it sounds
because an emergency has been declared, a lot of the things that we normally have to go through to get things done, they're out the window because it's an emergency. But the city has decided that if somebody wants to have pallet houses, they call them pallet houses because they are literally delivered on a pallet. And the company that delivers it on a pallet unfolds it and bolts it together, and it's a little house that can be made available for use within 30 minutes of construction. So that's why they call it a pallet house. There's not opposition to pallet houses, but there is a process that somebody has to go through to get it permitted. And I think the city, my impression is that the city doesn't want to bypass or go around what would normally be required to get those permitted by using the local emergency to bypass that process.
No, I can see them. I can see you setting up 20 here, 20 here, 20 here, but not in a whole big group. And then giving them so long that they can set up there or they have to be re-permitted again.
Yeah.
But I can't see doing nothing.
Yeah.
I think the city's making a mistake there.
So Sonoma County did something very similar where they
bought acreage.
They bought somewhere around 40 to 50 of these pallet houses and set them all up on one piece of property. And it seems to have worked out for them. So
They also have a thing set up for veterans.
Yeah. Yeah, there is currently no property identified in Turlock that is permitted for that use right now. But if somebody wants to go through the process, Turlock Golf Commission, We Care, or anybody else,
I think Turlock wants to eliminate some of these camps. They need to move a little quicker instead of dragging their feet by and saying, no, they have to have the special permits.
But so far, nobody has wanted to go
nobody
through the
wants
process.
to do the special permits.
Yeah. So if Turlock Golf Commission or We Care wants to go through the process, the money's available.
The city could drag their feet for a long time.
They could. I don't think that they would right now because there's so much effort and focus on this homeless crisis right now. I mean, they could drag their feet. Yeah, you have a question?
Well, I want to go back a little bit of maybe like you say that disposal problems or garbage or accumulation of garbage. what I'm noticing, and it was also my experience, that it's kind of a little expensive sometimes to try to dump it. You try and get garbage to the disposal. Anyway, I noticed that people dropping everything that you find, you probably see the streets. But I think if there is a way that do something within maybe the city and the communities, to find a way to get, I think every year they used to have like a big whatever to dispose, whatever you have. They probably
Twice
do
a
it.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still do it twice a year at Turlock Scavenger, where you
But
can,
I believe it's more than like 2 years because the problem is almost, I don't know how often, but very often. And I see a lot of the alleys
yeah.
flagged up. The experience was we tried to plug it out, but it's too expensive. So this is what was the experience. I got a several tire and the place over there was $150.
Yeah.
Just for that piece. And so I was thinking, I don't know why the guy, I was surprised. Anyway, so I needed to collect a piece of tire. It was kept with the tire. The story is kind of a little too expensive.
Yeah.
And I think that's why also some people, even in my case, I was thinking, we cannot really afford to every time. I mean, I spend probably approximately 40, 50 plus gas plus the day and the whole thing. Almost like maybe I say 60, 50, whatever, some kind of the range was small big, a little beneath a big. My thing is, I think that the city can help somehow because I see constantly people dumping and more in the canal area over there. And I think that it becomes a hassle also for whatever in the alleys too. It's kind of year round and becomes smell. And I think it's bad for health. The whole community, I see constantly, and I haven't seen no efforts for cleaning the graffiti sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they even, I think they give tickets to the owners, but I think it's, they always get upset because somebody comes and kind of vandalize the place, and they have to pay the vandals to destroy the stuff.
Yeah, so neighborhood services is a part of the fire department, which operates out of this building. Neighborhood services does deal with things like graffiti on buildings and cleaning up alleys. And so Turlock Scavenger is a really good partner with the city because they do things like these free dumps twice a year. And when things like Love Turlock happens, where a bunch of community members get together and go and clean up places, they do all that for free. But they are completely separate from the city, Turlock Scavenger, and they do these things for free to try to help. So if there's like a particular neighborhood or a particular alley that there's a problem in, outside of these other things like the free dump days and the Love Turlock thing, neighborhood services will come out and deal with it. So I don't know if you talked to them about it, but
well, I didn't know because
they
I
would
was
be the
trying
ones
to
to
think
deal with
it,
it.
and it's like no approach into it, and we deal with that every day. I mean, it's that the garbage is constant, and the we get tired, we clean it, and then somebody else comes and keep dumping, and then you do it again. And
You're responsible for the
and
middle of the alley.
you feel like they
Oh,
kind of wear you out. Kind of they win you because it's a minor stuff, like a piece of glass or plastic or whatever, but it's constant. And at one point you just worn out. You're like, what can you do? I mean,
Never ends.
and then the worst, when my neighbor told me they vandalized the place, and then the city almost enforced ticket in. And that was upsetting in a way, kind of why would you ticket me when the criminal is destroying my property, and now you come and...
I was dragged with that before too.
Oh, see,
or you got to clean up
was,
the graffiti, or you
Oh, right,
gotta
with Monte Vista.
get a ticket.
Had no, they wouldn't let me have a gate there on the property.
Yeah.
I asked them, let me put a gate, no. And so as soon as somebody put oil out in the back and dumped the car hood, came to my building, the city said, clean up, you're gonna fine you.
So yeah, sometimes
That
it's kind of
does
funny
do
stuff. That,
Yeah.
But it's not funny, but I mean, it's a kind of a problem. I find that to be odd that the city can find the property or
10:15. Okay, well, I thank you guys for coming today. Plan is to keep this up about once a month or so and just see what the concerns are and what we can do to help.
I learned a lot today.